Hey, this is Caden. Just putting a brief intro in here because I realized while I was editing that at some points in this episode we misgendered Christine. We had initially gone to decide that we were going to use the pronoun they just because this person's gender identity and life history are a bit confusing at points. And we did use the pronoun he at some points during our discussion. So I just wanted to put a brief disclaimer in here that we are not malicious in any way. We're not trying to make fun of this person's trans status. One of the hosts of this podcast is trans. And yeah, we are not malicious in any way. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy the episode. What was the wackiest shit that happened to you the past few weeks since we had a bit of a hiatus?
So yesterday I was taking my cat to the vet because he had to get his teeth cleaned.
Yeah.
And when I was coming home, I was talking to my Uber driver, and he was like, there's a lot of construction work going on in South Philly. And I was like, sure. And he was like,
sure, Jan.
You have to, like, turn on different streets to get around the construction. And I was like, yes. And then he was like, but I think it's okay in South Philly because not a lot of people drive down there. And I've been thinking about that all day. Because,
lots of people drive in South Philly.
Most people in South Philly drive. And he was like, yeah, not a lot of people. And I was like, have you ever tried to park in South Philly? There's so many cars.
No, it's a nightmare. It's a complete nightmare.
Yeah. I was just like, where did you make this assumption from? But then he told me he used to live in Boston. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Wait, is Boston like a drivey city?
No, they're just like very racist.
What does that have to do with it?
I don't know. I assume that he thought like most people in South Philly were like people of color, even though it's like white people.
Yeah, South Philly is like South Philly and Port Richmond are the white parts of Philly.
Yeah.
So
that was the assumption I made after he told me he was from Boston and he was a white man. But so that happened to me.
My ex's parents were from Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were they?
No, they were just weird and they smoked a lot.
Yeah.
On their porch.
Like cigs or?
Yeah, like cigs. And they would give me cigarettes and they were both alcoholics.
That sounds, I mean, that makes sense. Like that. That's like very stereotypical.
Yeah, and their dad, I can't remember if he was British or if he just had a really thick Boston accent and like the wires are getting crossed in my head.
Yeah, it sounds British. I personally think that that Brooklyn accent is arguably the worst accent in America.
Brooklyn?
Brookline?
Oh, Brookline.
Yeah, no, not the Brooklyn accent. The Brooklyn accent's fine.
Yeah.
No, like the Brookline, very New England accent it's terrible. Like the Cambridge accent, our Cambridge, not the one in England, but
God, there was a woman who came into my work yesterday, and from her voice, it was the first time I've ever heard a voice and been like, oh, okay, you're from rural PA. Mm-hmm. I've never had that experience, and I was just like, you sound like people I grew up with, and not from Philly. You sound like a working class rural person from PA.
Yeah.
So I don't know is that an accent that exists?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You can also tell when people are from rural PA because you'll say something, and instead of them being like, oh yes, or nodding or something that acknowledges you spoke to them, they'll just stare at you. That's something that really bothered me when I moved to PA from Kansas. I would talk to my classmates and they'd just stare at me. And I was like, what is going on?
I don't do that, do I?
Not really. I
Okay.
think that you've been out of rural PA long enough that you don't do that, but it's very disarming if you're not used to it.
I've never realized that.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Oh my god. So, I don't know what the craziest thing that happened to me this week was. Since the last time we spoke, I was cornered on the subway by a finance guy who I couldn't tell if he was into me or if he was just manic, but every time there was a pause in the conversation where I would try and look down to my phone, he would just keep talking about finance.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then he was like, what's your LinkedIn? And he
I gave him my real number and then just ignored him.
Has he texted you?
Yes, he called me at one point.
Oh, he called you?
Yeah.
That's bold.
And left, like, a professional-sounding voicemail.
Does he want to, like... Is he networking? Is he
he
networking
said,
on the subway?
I think that's what was going on.
Yeah.
Because he was, like, trying to almost... It sounded like... I don't know, there was one point where, like, another train was going past, and I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it sounded like he was trying to talk me into something.
An MLM?
Yeah. So yeah.
He's trying to get you involved in the children's book MLM.
What? You can't possibly make a ton of money with a children's book MLM.
You can't make any money with any MLM, but people are convinced that they're going to be, like, the 1% that makes money.
Yeah, well, like, at least with the makeup ones, you know, people restock their makeup and have some brand loyalty. Like, one of my old roommates, like, exclusively used Mary Kay, and that's, like, MLM makeup.
Yeah.
But, like, if you're selling, like, fucking Tupperware, or, like, plates, or, like, children's books or some bullshit like that, you're gonna have, like, customers that buy from you one time, and then you have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, but also if you think about it, like, I don't know, like, Tupperware and stuff like that, they get, like extreme brand loyalty, enough that people will buy it for, like, other people's weddings as, like, gifts and stuff.
Tupperware?
Yeah, so I feel like that's, like, a pretty lucrative one. Also, Pampered Chef is they make this, I didn't know this, but they apparently, like, make, like, food mixes, and they have this, like, beer bread that they make that's actually really good. Just my little MLM plug.
Just, like, ale bread? Where's my coffee?
Yeah, you're just required to add a bottle of beer to it, and then you bake it in the oven, and it's really good. Yeah, but, I can't imagine children's books being lucrative simply because, like, your child is only that age for so long.
Right.
So then you have to, like, move on and find other people to extort for money.
Did I ever tell you that I went to an MLM vibrator party once?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it was weird. It was through, like, my old roommate's friends that got, like, talked into it, I guess. And they were like, it's women only, so I had to pretend to be a girl.
My God.
And that was the most uncomfortable part of it.
Yeah, I'm sure. That sounds very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
One of my Facebook friends invited me to something like that, because, like, a big thing now is, like, they'll make a page for it.
Right.
And they do, like, little giveaways and stuff. And you're, like, MLM, like, the person above you will, like, host the thing and, like, teach you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I promptly just left the group. I was like, I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to organize my thoughts here because I'm tired. Mm-hmm. But, like, let's move on to today's discussion topic.
Sure.
The thing that I am subjecting you to in regards to the internet. So how familiar are you with Lolcows and, like, gawking culture and 4chan adjacent, like, stuff like that?
So I have, like, a kind of, like, I want to say the word tepid.
What does tepid even mean? I think tepid,
like,
and I think, like, water that's been sitting out for a while.
Yeah, I have, like, a very small amount of knowledge on it.
Yeah.
I suppose after I watched, like, these videos, I learned more about it. But, so I have, like, I understand that, like, a lolcow is, like, someone that gets essentially, like, memed and, like, mocked.
Yeah, it's essentially the thing is, like, they're being milked for lols.
I hate that.
I know, it's disgusting.
I hate that so much. I didn't know that was one of it.
But it's... Yeah, I think of it in terms of, like, I have personal lolcows, like, people I know that...
Ben Shapiro?
Yeah. Or just, like, people I know in real life where I'm just like, how are you a real person? And they keep doing crazy shit.
Fair. I guess we share some lolcows.
Yeah, exactly.
If you will.
If you will, from prior work experiences.
Yep.
But yeah, I think Chris Chan, who will we be discussing, and I recognize that as far as internet culture goes, that's sort of like beating a dead horse, but they are still around, and we will be using the pronoun they because Their gender identity history has long been in flux, and it's very confusing, and I don't want to, like, mess up and
incorrectly.
Like, say something offensive. God, what was my train of thought there?
My familiarity with Lolcows and 4chan.
So there are several Lolcows. There are two distinct Lolcow forums I can think of outside of, like, 4chan existing, and Something Awful, which is, I think, defunct at this point. There's lolcow.farm, which is sort of 4chan adjacent in its formatting, I think, and it's mostly women on there. I could be making that up, but it seems mostly focused on, like, female YouTubers and, like, Tumblr personalities that people are making fun of. There's an art YouTuber that gets memed on a lot, who I read a thread of on there, and then there's Kiwi Farms, which I spend an embarrassing amount of time on. Part of it is emotional self-harm. Part of it is, like, genuine curiosity.
Yeah.
Which was initially founded to document Chris Chan, I believe.
Kiwi Farms.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll get into Kiwi Farms a bit later, because I want to frame this as talking about just the ethical weirdness of all of this, and what it means in, like, a cultural context. So, that being said, did you know anything about Chris Chan going into this?
I had, like, very vague knowledge.
Okay.
It, like, kind of came up to the surface, like, these suppressed thoughts and knowledge.
Right.
As I was watching the videos. But, honestly, like, really the only thing that I knew about them was just, like, how people, like, I knew about Sonichu. I knew about, like, the comic.
Okay.
I knew about their transition and how, like, that was kind of mocked. And I knew about, like, the homophobia. Those were, like, the main things that were, like, familiar to me. I didn't know about, like, them, like, including people in their lives and their comics and things like that. Like, I didn't know about that extent, or, like, their house burning down, and, yeah.
God, the house burning down.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I learned about Chris Chan in 2016, and I'm someone who spends, like, a lot of time online. So I guess I was curious, like, what other people's exposure would be. I know my sister knows about them and found out about them recently, which was interesting, because it's, like, 2020 and not, like, 2008.
Yeah.
And she's someone who I think is more on, like, the Discord, Tumblr, TikTok side of things, as opposed to, like, me growing up primarily on, like, DeviantArt and anime message boards.
Yeah.
So there's that, yeah. I found out about Chris Chan in 2016. I think there was a Tumblr for a while called The Cringe Channel, where they would just post, like, cringy shit to, like, gawk at.
Yeah.
And Chris Chan would come up on occasion. Wow, I just thought of something from there. Do you want something awful to know about?
Why not?
The My Little Pony cum jar.
Oh my god. Why did I already know about that?
I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
Yeah, that's another picture that comes to mind. But yeah, and then I went on the Quickie, which is a Wikipedia dedicated entirely to Chris Chan's life. There's a statement that gets memed around a lot that Chris Chan is, like, the most documented person in history. And I think there might be some veracity to that, because we know literally everything about this person, because no holds barred, they will say just about anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, why don't you talk me through some of your initial reactions?
So, I guess my initial reaction, as is with most of, like, gawking culture, was, like, I don't know. I have, like, a hard time with gawking culture because it's not something that, like, I ever involve myself in. And it's, like, when I, like, see other people doing it, like, my immediate, like, visceral reaction is just, like, why are you doing this to, like, this other person?
Which is completely fair and I think
so,
normal.
Yeah. I guess, like, because of that, like, I sort of felt, like, sympathy for them. Obviously, I think, like, that's normal to, like, feel, like,
absolutely.
sympathy for them. But, like, you also have to, like, take into consideration, like, just, like, the widespread misogyny and, like, homophobia in their work and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously 100% something to be said. I think I wrote down in my notes here, we need better services for adult disabled people.
Yeah.
Because part of the thing with Christian is that they had older parents who were hoarders, and I think working class.
Yeah.
Their dad was an engineer, and I don't know if their mom worked. They basically stuck them into a public school in the 90s, and people didn't know what to do with autistic kids then. And they kind of treated Christine Chandler as if they were a normal kid and sort of like indulged all their like video game and toy fixations without really steering them into a productive direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's obviously was a recipe for them not turning out to be as functional as they could have. And then you add into that the fact that when they were in their late teens, early 20s, they kind of fell into being harassed online they're almost 40 now.
Yeah.
So this has been going on since, 2007?
Yeah. Quite a while.
So I can only imagine the effects that's had on someone's, like, already fragile mental state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, even when, like, their father died of a heart attack, like, they insinuated and just essentially blamed it on the people who were, like, harassing them and their trolls. Which is, like, if you're in that situation, like, I understand that response. Like,
yeah, I mean, you're harassing someone with, like, middle functioning autism.
Yeah.
To get them to do ridiculous things.
Yeah.
And then mocking them for it. That's gonna have, like, really ill mental health effects.
Exactly. And also, like, circling back to, like, the just services for, like, children with autism, there were a couple of videos that talked about how, like, their parents were offered the opportunity to give them, like, special services or put them in different schools, and like, their parents were like, no, that's okay, like, we're just gonna raise them like they're like a neurotypical child, which I think, like, first of all, just, like, is a huge signal of just, like,
my parents tried to do that.
It's just, like, a huge signal of, like, the stigma behind, like, autism and how, like, even today people do that. Like, they deny their kids, like, any sort of help or, like, accommodations and things in school because, like, there's this concept that if your kid isn't neurotypical, it's bad, and rather than helping them, you should just make them conform.
Yeah. So, that being said, I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't really have the narrative of Chris Chan straight in my head anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's been a few years since I did a deep dive. I read a few forum threads this morning to see what they were up to these days, and it's nothing good. Their mental health has declined massively.
Yeah.
But yeah, they would, for the uninitiated, I guess, this all started when someone posted on, a classmate of Christian's, I believe, posted on Something Awful, which was a popular message board in, like, the mid-2000s. I don't think it's widely used anymore. That someone would, like, walk around their college, I think it was a community college in Virginia, with a sign that said they were looking for a boyfriend-free girl and, like, try to proposition women.
Yeah.
And Chris Chan got in trouble for this, obviously. Like, the dean was just like, yo, dude, you, like, you can't be doing this. This is bad. And, I mean, she wasn't the nicest to them, obviously, but they kind of threw a tantrum and they had to have, like, court-ordered therapy.
Yeah, so they wrote about... So they had the comic Sonichu that they were writing, I believe, from high school onwards?
Yeah, so Sonichu was, like, a project in high school that they had to make a CD, I believe, and they wanted to use either Sonic or Pikachu, and their teacher was like, you can't use copyrighted characters, so they had the genius idea to combine
both, yeah.
And that was their OC from then on, that they used for their poorly drawn self-insert comic.
Yeah.
That was their escapist fantasy.
Exactly. So, like, different people from their lives featured, including the dean of the school, who, like, they villainized, and then wrote a letter to the dean.
I believe so.
Like a harassing letter, and sent it, like, either to her house or to, like, just gave it to her office. And because of that, they were not allowed to, like, be on school grounds for, like, a full year.
Yeah.
And they couldn't return until they had, like, psychological help.
It took them 6 years to graduate their associate's degree.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else? They would also stand around with their seeking an 18 to 24-year-old boyfriend-free girl who can't be over 250 pounds.
Yeah, can't be over 230 pounds, has to be white, can't be a cop, has to be, like... Dude, I just, like, watched it this morning. Like, I refreshed my brain with, like, the deep dive this morning. What else? They can't... Yeah, they have to be white, can't be a cop.
The cop thing is so funny. Also, 230 just seems like such an arbitrary number to choose.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm assuming that was their weight or something?
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Like, around there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think there was something else, but I can't remember it right now. Oh, has to, like, not... Like, can't have autism.
Right. That was the part where people were laughing the most at.
Yeah, because they put underneath that, like, at least on one forum post that they did, that they had high functioning autism, like, but the boyfriendless girl could not. And then they were
also just like, I apologize for any nerves I may have touched with this. I'm just being honest.
I'm just being honest, and I appreciate your consideration, but if you do not qualify, please spread this to other people who may qualify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing with Chris, with a lot of this, is, like, as someone who grew up autistic, and for a while, I also kind of did, like, a Sonichu thing, where I would have, like, these grand escapist stories I would, like, make up in my head and draw, like, crappy pictures for when I was a kid. But that was something I sort of grew out of by, like, early high school.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, just something that, like, stayed with them because they weren't really allowed to
really process
anything. Yeah.
And they also didn't have a strong support system.
Not at all.
Of any kind. So, like, they process, like, a lot of their, like, anger or frustration towards either, like, people in their lives or, like, trolls online.
Yeah.
Things like that, like, through their comics.
And also, like, once they started getting trolled by, like, Something Awful and 4chan and stuff like that, the whole thing gets so convoluted. Like, I can't really remember all of the details, but they let Chris edit the quickie at some point. Oh,
yeah. They started just editing it. I don't know if it was, like, I don't know how that... Do you have to get an allowance to, like, do it? Do they have to, like, let you?
It probably just gave them a login.
Yeah, because Chris started writing on there, like, things in, like, first person and stuff. So people began to, like, realize that it was them. And I think they called it, like, info dumping or, like, info something. Saying essentially that, like, if I give all of this information, like, one, maybe these people will stop being mean to me, and two, like, then they can't put that information out there.
They like, continued to take the bait every time.
Yeah.
Just, like, blew things out of proportion. Like, they would, like, communicate to the trolls through, like, YouTube videos where they would do, like, or they would, like, be convinced to do, like, absolutely disgusting and horrible shit.
Yeah.
Like, we know what Chris's dick looks like.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah, some of it spread into real life where people would, like, actually prank them.
Or, like, pretend, like, catfish them.
Yeah.
And then pretend to be...
The man in the pickle suit thing is actually funny,
okay.
though.
Like, it is funny,
I know.
But it's also really fucking sad.
I know. Just the idea of the man
because
being cucked by a man in a pickle suit.
And the thing is, like, they hated pickles. And then they put the pickle suit man into the comic and, like, killed him. And it was like, wasn't it like it was like a arc, right? It wasn't just one issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god. I think the best joke Chris ever made was that they would continuously call 4chan 4-cent garbage.
Oh, yeah.
In their comics. I
Yeah.
actually thought that was clever.
I thought that was funny too, and how they like burned down they went to the 4-cent garbage headquarters and demanded that they stop posting mean things online, and they're like, nope. And so they killed everyone and then like burned it down.
God, there was also like one troll that like Chris sent Chris a picture of them, but if like you Google searched like Guido, it was like the first picture.
Oh yeah. Because that became like a villain, right?
Right.
And
yeah.
the comic was like this like Guido guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was also, digging back in my memories a bit here, Chris has had several run-ins with the law.
Mm-hmm.
They would frequent GameStop, which like makes sense. Their main interest is video games and stuff like that. But there was a Sonic game released where Sonic's arms were flesh-colored.
No longer flesh-colored.
No
they
longer
were blue.
They were blue.
Yeah.
And they threw a tantrum at GameStop and I think got kicked out.
They maced a GameStop employee.
They maced a GameStop
Yeah, because
employee.
they kept going to GameStop and putting like little disclaimers within like the packaging of like the Sonic game saying don't play this because the arms are blue and they're no longer flesh colored. And so the people at GameStop were like, hey, you gotta stop doing that.
Understandably.
And so then they like they didn't mace them in the face, they maced their clothes. But yeah, this was after, so Chris spent a lot of time in like, I believe it was called the game room.
Yeah, where they would like play Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah,
and stuff.
they would play games with people, but they like put like a harassing note or something on like one of like the games that were in there.
Yeah.
And because of that, like the guy who like owned the place was like, hey, like this is vandalism, like you can't come here anymore. And before that,
Which
Chris had
sucks
been doing
because,
like weird
like,
shit there too.
Yeah, like there was a girl there who was just like being genuinely nice and friendly to them and was probably just like, oh, okay, here's a weird person.
Yeah.
I'll hang out with them and talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I like that too.
Yeah.
And then Chris became like hyper fixated on making her their girlfriend, which they did a lot of.
Yeah.
And then she was like, dude, like, fuck off, I'm never talking to you again.
Was that the person that he drew like sexual pictures of?
It might have been.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there was someone he knew in real life, he did that too. And she was just like, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently, like, the girls who were nice to him in high school found out about them and decided never to talk to him again.
Which is, like, fair.
Yeah.
Like, I understand why you would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so he got kicked out of the game room, and I think, like, a few years later, he and his mother returned to, like, harass
Well, is that
people.
when Barb hit someone with her car?
Yeah, and they both had to, like, do a year of probation, I want to say.
God.
Yeah, so that was another run-in with the law. I know they got banned from the mall because they kept standing around with, like, signs asking for, like, a boyfriendless girl.
Which is why they hate cops.
Yeah, which is why they hate cops. Because...
Chris Chan says ACAB.
Oh my god. And for that, we support.
Yeah, so... Because I jumped into the Chris Chan saga in 2016... Like, some of my first exposure to them was through their Facebook when they were, like, vocally supporting Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
Which was interesting because they have a history of being, like, homophobic and, like, ignorantly racist.
Yeah.
And shit. But they clung on to Hillary really hard and would, like, post a bunch of, like, liberal stuff. And also, their Facebook is weird because I think they'll, like, you'll send them a friend request and they'll friend just about anybody.
Okay.
So lots of people taunting them on there.
That's horrible. Why would you...
I know. That's also around the time the, like, transition saga begins, which there's, like, they did some genuinely awful stuff to themselves there, self-injury-wise.
Yeah.
With the perineum piercing and whatnot, which I think is, like, the most disturbing part to me personally about all of this.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't, like, super deep dive into that, but... Yeah, I mean, because, like, definitely, like, dysphoria is seeded through the comics. Like, if you look at it, just, like... And also just the things that they said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's rough, too, because it sort of, like, feeds into this whole, like, internet forum narrative that autistic people, quote-unquote, like, troon out because they're, like, socially incompetent and they, like, want to fulfill some sexual fantasy.
Mm.
And if you go on, like, Kiwi Farms or something like that, they'll point to various, like, genuinely weird people on Twitter who are trans and be like, look at this fucking weirdo, and let's cherry pick examples to, like, make our point that trans people are stupid and dumb and self-harming. So Christian feeds in that narrative. Digibro, who is a friend of Ben Saint, whose video I sent you, feeds into that narrative for them too.
Yeah.
And Digibro is also someone who is socially incompetent and somewhere on the spectrum and has a hard time taking care of themselves. So that just makes everything, like... Yeah.
For our listeners at home, you just kind of made a crossing arm, crossing motion.
I couldn't think of how to like top off that point that I was trying to make, but yeah, it's not great on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, period. The internet is a toxic place, and I definitely, like, this brings to mind just how much easier it is for people to say extremely horrible, threatening, like, harassing things on the internet versus, like, things that they would never say to that person's face.
Like, I've always been, like, weirdly fascinated by, like, 4chan and troll culture and, like, various weird, like, forum boards where everyone is, like, unnecessarily brutal to each other. Like, there's something so fascinating to that to me about, like, seeing people talk to each other, like, no holds barred, completely ad hominem.
Yeah.
And I feel like because I've orbited around that for so long without actually, like, engaging in it full stop, I've, like, internalized a lot of, like, dangerous ideas about myself.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean...
And, like, also, I have, like, several friends who are right of center.
Yeah.
Who engaged, I guess, past tense, in that culture when we were in high school.
Yeah.
And I feel like that proximity has been bad for me as well, because I'm treated as, like, one of the good ones to people.
Yeah, that does definitely, like, pigeonhole you just because simply they're, like, they know you and are more comfortable with you versus, like, some, like, monolith that they see online and are comfortable mocking.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, like, well, you're one of the good ones because you can have a civil conversation. Meanwhile, like, plenty of people are willing to have civil conversations as long as you don't personally insult them.
Yeah, as long as you don't, like, attack them and their character and, like, they're just
and,
being
like,
as a whole.
I have, like, a higher tolerance for, like, bullshittery, like, ideas than most people, I guess.
Yeah.
So that just feeds a whole thing that makes me really uncomfortable.
That, understandably, I guess I've always kind of distanced myself from that simply because, like, it just, I mean, I just feel uncomfortable.
Understandably.
When I, like, read things like that. And also, like, I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm like, why bother taking this in? Like, what is it going to bring to my life?
I don't know. I've always liked arguing with people a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's fun and cathartic. And beyond that, there's, like, sort of the drive to prove, like, how thick-skinned you are. Like, competitively. Like, how many insults can you take?
Yeah.
Which is probably internalized toxic masculinity.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I know that I am very thin-skinned, can take about 0 insults, and also have, like, a visceral physiological reaction when I argue with people online. Enough that, like, I sit there and, like, shake waiting for them to reply.
Yeah, there's, like, I just want to, like, prove that I can, like, keep up with, like, internet men and, like, take it as much as I dish it out, you know?
Yeah.
It becomes very, like, like cyclical and dangerous.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and like when I tell people about that, they're just like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" But there's like such a draw to it for me.
You want to win.
I want to win, exactly.
That's human nature right there.
Yeah, so we have that. The whole Chris transitioning thing obviously gets mocked a lot because they don't present and, well, it's obviously they don't take care of themselves very well.
Yeah.
They still live at home with their mother, who is basically at death's door at this point. The only time Chris really leaves the house is to go to conventions, I think, and they'll still, like, overshare excessively disturbing details about themselves on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, apparently since early 2020, they are convinced that they are now Sonichu.
Really?
Yeah, and are posting as Sonichu and, like, some garbled nonsense about, like, a dimensional merge.
Okay.
So...
Is it like a furry thing?
That's what people are trying to figure out. They're trying to
Yeah.
figure out if they are just going, like, completely deep into the escapist fantasy because their life has, like, come to such a
Entirely,
rough
like,
spot.
Yeah.
Or if it's, like, genuine, like, schizoaffective stuff. Mm-hmm. Or if it's just, it's, like, furry shit that they're playing up. Because Chris is on, like, Twitter now and will, like, engage with, like, furry artists to draw fan art of them.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of really upsetting.
It's
if,
very
like,
upsetting.
Not them behaving that way, but just, like, why they're behaving that way, you know? Like, if they want to be Sonichu, like, feel free. But at the same time, like, yeah, I mean, it just seems like they're totally, like, trying to really, like, fall into the escapism of it.
Yeah, and apparently, like, some trolls who are more hands-off have, like, offered to, like, help Chris financially.
Okay.
And Chris just, like, doesn't really take them up on it or want it.
Yeah.
Which I guess I can understand.
Yeah, I saw, like, a couple places, like, them, like, asking their, like, supporters and such to, like, help them, like, support them and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they do have an Etsy store.
Okay.
Where they sell, like, Sonichu shit.
Yeah.
But, like, people very rarely receive their orders.
Really?
Yeah, because they're so disorganized.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, how do you... On that very sad note, you just, like, made the most, like, downtrodden face.
I was just thinking, like, I'm so sad.
I know!
It's so sad because you don't know how to help them, and at the same time,
and I
like...
mean, they're very poor. They live on the outskirts of Charlottesville, I think. And they're not really gonna get help until, like, they do something really dumb and really stupid.
Yeah.
And they wind up in court, and then maybe, like, they'll send them to, like, an assisted living home. But because Reagan slashed all the funding for, like, state institutions in the 80s, there's, like, not a ton of beds for adults with disabilities.
Nope.
Which is very bad.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that. We don't have to go into it.
I want you to go
can't.
into it.
Okay, so...
You're the person with, like, the psych degree.
So, the reason I have mixed feelings about that is, one, because, like, a lot of people were, like, abused.
Right,
and,
like,
institutionalized.
deinstitutionalization happened for a reason.
Exactly.
It wasn't just a money thing.
Like, on the surface, it, like, makes sense why deinstitutionalization happened, and
Right.
now it started a movement, like, even within the prison system, to deinstitutionalize, like, people who are, like, quote-unquote, like, criminally insane, and in actuality just have had, like, zero support in society, like,
Right.
not to, like, discredit, like, the fact that they did hurt other people, but the fact that, like, they were never treated for their disorders and things like that. Like, there has been a push to, like, reintroduce them to, like, society and, like, kind of dismantle the system of, like, forcing people to
Right.
be in a space where they're never going to get help and are just kind of separated from society.
My dad, when I was really sick, would always do this thing where he would go, like, "You're gonna be a ward of the state."
Stop.
And I'm just like, no one's been a ward of the state since, like, 85.
Yeah. My dad also liked to perpetuate this like concept that like every time my mom became manic that she just like wouldn't come back from the mania. And I don't know like where he got that idea, but like that's not a thing that happens.
No.
You can like have sustained manic periods for like years, but it's not like you never stop because your body just can't sustain
because you're like not sleeping, you're barely eating, you're just like zooming constantly. Like that's not sustainable.
No, it's not. Yeah, you're gonna crash eventually, and that's why mania is cyclical.
And like you crash into the depression because like you're all burnt out.
Yeah. Okay, so I do support the concept of like community behavioral health centers, and like with Reagan's like push for that, it funneled a lot of money into community behavioral health centers and like gave people access to mental health services that previously did not have that access, but as most government systems do, it failed. And so now there's like an oversaturation within community behavioral health centers, so people can't receive the help that they actually need.
Right, and like people who are very chronically mentally ill or adults with severe disabilities have really nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And like if they're not being like consistently supported by a caregiver, which is a very exhausting job, number one, and number two, a lot of people don't have access to someone like that. They just end up in this cycle of like going in and out of the ER or court constantly.
Yeah.
I watched an HBO documentary recently about like children with like oppositional defiance disorder. And like this poor mother was like at the end of her rope with her son, who just would just like explode and like break things and like try to hurt his sister. And she had to wait months and months and months for him to like get into a bed somewhere because there were like only 5 beds in the state for kids.
Yeah.
It's just like incredibly rough. And like the only place I know in Philly for like adults who are like chronically mentally ill is Episcopal.
Yeah.
And I've been to Episcopal. I had to stay there for like a week and a half. It is not a nice place.
No,
it's
like
falling apart.
Like most psych wards aren't nice places.
That was the only experience I've had in like a mental health crisis where I felt genuinely unsafe.
Yeah.
Because people were like trying to fight me and trying to hurt me and screaming all the time.
Yeah. And that's like another reason why a lot of people, especially like people who have a lot of suicidal ideations or like things like that, like don't trust mental health professionals because like there's not a lot of options.
Right. Because if you like admit to like your school therapist or something that you're like having suicidal thoughts, they're gonna call the cops on you, which is like one, traumatic, and two, you end up in like a fucking psych ward when you don't need to.
Extra traumatic.
Yeah.
Because then you're trapped there and you feel like you don't want to be there and it's not going to help you.
Yeah, and then you have that like crisis where you're just like, how do I tell everyone where I am?
Yeah.
And how are they going to react to it?
Exactly. Because there's the stigma associated with it.
Right.
And that goes hand in hand with like police having essentially no mental health training and like the extremely like traumatic incident of you like being like, I am unsafe with myself. And then
I just
police,
remember like when I was 19, like, this cop drove me to one of the hospitals in Annapolis where I had to, like, sit in a room watching Rachel Maddow with the sound all the way, like, down to where you could barely hear it because there was no remote. And I had to sit there for, like, 9 hours before they got an ambulance for me to, like, take me to some hospital elsewhere. But he was, like, trying to make small talk, and it was so fucking awkward.
Was he there for all 9 hours?
No, he just drove me there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I was just like, dude, this is, like, a really fucked up situation. Please stop talking to me.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really know what to do,
yeah.
You know?
I did have a cop let me smoke in the back of a cop car once, though. That was pretty cool.
That's a story you can take with you.
Yeah. I was just like, I'm freaking out. Can I have a cigarette? He was just like, yeah, I'll roll the window down.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I've seen cops, like, mock people who got, like... what's the code when you're
302?
Yeah. So that was cool.
I've been 302.
Yeah.
There was also like the wellness check that happened on me, and all the cops showed up to my house at like 9 p.m. while I was taking a nap, and my roommates were freaking out. And then I was just like, oh no, like I'm fine. I texted my therapist and then fell asleep. That was a great experience.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah.
It sounds like a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Loved my college years.
Yeah. It's a good time, especially mental health-wise, when you go to a giant university that has almost zero mental health support.
I know.
And then they're like, oh, you want long-term care? You can go find it somewhere else. Or you can get once-a-month therapy sessions.
Once a month?
Once a month.
Were they offering you once a month?
They didn't. I like, when I got my intake, I was like, I need long-term. Like, I need, like, long-term therapy.
Yeah.
And so they were like, well, we can't offer you that here. And I was like, yeah, I know. And then they, like, someone helped me find a place to go. But I do know some people who went to, like, the center that you know of, that did get offered, like, once a month therapy.
I got once a week there, but I think I just kind of lucked out with the timing.
It's literally timing.
Yeah.
Like, if you start, like, it depends, like, when you start during the semester. I did it during the summer, so no one was there, so I got to see, like, a psychiatrist within, like, 3 or 4 days.
Right.
Which is actually very, very helpful, because, I mean, I was in, like, a really bad place. And, yeah, and then they, like, helped me find a therapist, but it took me about, like, 3 weeks to find a therapist, and then, like, another 2 months to get in, because I started therapy in the winter, so I guess I started seeking a therapist, like, around finals week, so they were, like, super saturated with people.
The psychiatrist there was horrible for me.
I had the other one.
Yeah, he just kept putting me on, like, a bunch of antipsychotics because he was just like, well, this didn't work, maybe this will work. So I went through, like, a bunch of medications in a very short time.
Yeah.
And I was pretty much zombified.
Yeah.
It wasn't good.
I remember.
I would also, like, fall asleep in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
So I was, like, constantly falling asleep during my capstone.
Oh, great. God.
And Dr. Ryan was just like, is everything okay? And you could also, like, the fucking Geodon, or, like, whatever the antipsychotic is named. I don't remember the general name for it, because I was on a Risperdal and that.
Yeah.
So I was on 2 antipsychotics, which isn't good. It's called polypharmacy.
Yeah.
It would mellow me out so much, I would have no anxiety, but that also meant I had, like, no motivation to do anything.
Oh my god.
And, like, I could feel when, like, one dose wore off, because I would, like, feel a panic attack
Oh
coming
my god,
on.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which was just quite an experience.
That sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
That's kind of like when you start coming out of depression, you know, and you start feeling feelings again, and then you're like, oh my god, like, all of these feelings are way too much.
Right.
Yeah.
So, back to the topic at hand. Sorry, I'm, like, having trouble facilitating because I'm tired.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I think this is, like, one of those topics where you're not really sure, like...
I kind of had an idea of what direction I wanted to go in.
Yeah.
Which is namely, like... Well, we've sort of covered, like, the ethical part of this, but I kind of want to ask you about how you feel about gawking and the draw of it and sort of the culture surrounding that as a whole, because we have people like Christian and Onision, who I don't know if you know about, and then we also have stuff like TLC shows, like 1,000 Pound Sisters, like 600 Pound Life, 90 Day Fiancé, where you're just watching, like, really awful situations for entertainment value and, like, car crash, train wreck value.
Yeah.
And I think there's just such a psychological draw to that a lot of people, like, don't even think twice about what they're consuming.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's, like, that vicarious experience of, like, the other, you know, that we're, like, drawn to. But honestly, like, it gets to the point where you're not seeing the other people as humans anymore, and you're just kind of seeing them as, like, entertainment or, like, something you can focus on and talk about.
And especially with, like, lolcows on the internet, because a lot of times people who are drawn to the internet very, very strongly are people who have a lot of problems functioning IRL.
Yeah.
And especially functioning socially IRL, and are often people with, like, psychological issues.
Yeah.
so the draw there becomes like logging on and being like, what has this person done now that I can laugh at, because they're constantly doing something batshit. So you have like forums like Kiwi Farms that are like completely dedicated to like documenting everything these people do.
Yeah.
And sometimes Kiwi Farms can be valuable in that it will like leak that people aren't good people like they seem to be. Like several YouTubers have had threads on there. That's, I think, how like the story on like Trans Lifeline not being the best broke, which is unfortunate because it was through a transphobic lens. But like, at least I know now that the women who run it are kind of not great.
Yeah.
And refuse to like call police on people if they're having a suicidal crisis, which I know obviously we don't support cops here at the podcast, but like if that's like the last like way to help someone,
you need to
do that
because unfortunately it's kind of the only solution we have at hand.
Also, I think it's a legal liability question mark.
Yeah, no, it for sure is.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what certifications and things that they're using, but like if someone was to die and they got sued, then they could be stripped of like licensure and then not be able to get licensed again, depending on like what their qualifications are, etc.
Yeah, and based on what I read there, I've also learned that like Trans Lifeline has like a very hard time actually answering calls, which is really sad because I feel like that's the only like trans affirming like hotline service.
Yeah.
And people post it everywhere being like, this is where you can call if you're in crisis, because they see it advertised and then it just like does not live up to its standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the transphobia aspect is the most unfortunate. Because like it's really, really easy to internalize that stuff if you read a lot of it, which I don't know. I kind of had a crisis about that a few weeks ago because I was questioning myself a lot.
Yeah.
But they do have like a pretty deep catalog of like trans affirming surgeons who do botch jobs, which I found helpful. Because like at least I know where not to go now. And I feel like there's a lot of like they use the term like hug boxing, which I think is stupid and ridiculous.
What does that mean?
It just means like when you're being self-destructive, everyone just like gives you head pats.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which is like an aspect of Twitter culture that you've seen, obviously. But the way it's like framed in a transphobic way, I don't really like, where it's just like someone comes out and everyone's just like, okay, you're a her now, sweetie. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up. That's not how anything works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's my main complaint there.
That makes sense. I mean, especially like given it's so pervasive and it seems to be like within like the very fundamental bones of the website, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's sad that sort of like the last bastions of what I feel like is like the bones of like old internet culture is on these sites that are just so horrendously toxic.
Yeah.
That you can't really spend time there without doing psychological damage to yourself.
Yeah, or at least like just getting upset whether you internalize that or not.
And a part of that too is that when the web started going mainstream with the rise of smartphones, everyone on 4chan sort of threw a tantrum about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's when things started getting, like, actively right-wing.
I think so, too. Especially with, like, the rise of, like, bad meme culture, if you will.
Bad meme culture.
Like, everything being memeable, and I guess that kind of also plays into like gawking culture.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And like memeing everything and like mocking things collectively.
And like a little bit of that I don't have a problem with when it's like sequestered off into like the web not having any integration into real life. But once that line blurs, it becomes incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. Especially like you look at Chris Chan, you, like, look at how their life was just fundamentally affected by, like, the things that other people said. Yeah.
Yeah, and now that it's just, the internet is, like... It's terrifying to me that the internet growing up was something where, like, I would come home from school, I would sit at the family computer, be on it for a few hours, and then I'd, like, do my homework and go to bed. Whereas now it's, like, part of, like, almost every waking moment of your life.
Yeah.
And psychologically, I think that does such harm to us because we're sort of just, like, integrated with this massive network of everyone, like, so many people in the world all the time being, like, bombarded with information and drama and, like, bad shit.
Yeah.
That it's very hard to stay, like, sane and stable.
Yeah, it's hard to, like, separate and understand that, like, not everything other people say is the truth. And, like, not everything other people say is with genuine intent.
Yeah.
And also that, like, you don't have to apply everything to yourself. And, like, that you don't have to, like, believe everything you see. But it's easy to, especially, like, when you live in, like, an echo chamber, which, like, the internet is intentionally set up to do.
Right.
Like, we exist within algorithms that intentionally show us what we want to see. So then we see the same ideas over and over and over again.
Yeah, I've essentially, at this point, cut myself off from most social media.
Yeah.
Except for Facebook, which, like, fuck Zuckerberg, and Facebook is an evil monolith. We all know this. We've watched that fucking Cambridge Analytica documentary. But it's mostly because that's how I stay in, like, touch with people.
Yeah, you have the connection.
Whereas, like, Twitter just fucking ruined my brain.
Yeah.
I was just like, why are all of these people super popular and I'm not, like... And I felt like every thought I had to be, like, affirmed by other people, which, like, obviously that's not how human beings are supposed to work.
No. And also existing, like, on a knife's edge where you're worried if anything you say will, like, have you canceled, you know?
Which is, like...
Canceled, quote,
That's not how accountability is supposed to work for laymen,
and that's
for
not
the
how,
for
like,
the every person.
Education works either.
No, like, I understand holding, like, public figures accountable in that way, because they still have a platform and, like, otherwise, like, they're not going to be held accountable.
Yeah.
But when it's just, like, some dude that you know, like, you can't talk about, like, transformative justice on one hand and, like, do the canceling shit on the other. That's not healthy. That's not how this works.
Exactly. And you also can't cancel people because they don't hold the same political beliefs as you do. Or they don't hold the same, like, ideological beliefs as you do.
I got brainwashed so hard into thinking I believed things that made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the pop leftism stuff that just, like, I could feel made me feel wrong. And, like, I honestly believe, like, everyone has to define their own truth, and that just wasn't mine.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was what I had to espouse, otherwise people were going to come after me.
Yeah, and it's very easy to accept these ideas that people are essentially spoon-feeding you.
Yeah.
Without, like, applying critical thinking, and then when you start applying critical thinking, you start to realize, like, I don't actually agree with this, but if you put up any sort of, like, you know, like, anything, like, refuting that or pushing back against it, people are like, well, why don't you feel this way? You're wrong.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
That sort of culture, too, is what makes me nervous to go into academic gender studies as opposed to the social sciences. Because my experience with the Temple Gender Studies department was sort of similar to that, as far as the... What's the word? I can't remember the word. The dynamics.
Yes.
The dynamics were.
I don't know if that is generalizable to, like higher education.
Yeah, but you see a lot of PhDs on Twitter acting that way.
Yeah, but then you have to think
me.
about, like, how do they act in real life? And also, like...
I mean, I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm still scared of gender studies.
That's, like, it makes sense, but I've also had professors who have taught gender studies classes, and then people within those classes have tried to, like, say some shit. Like, I had one professor, and she got a job at a university, and someone in the class was like, hey, like, I don't know if you should necessarily work at that university, or, like, just be aware that they've had, like, they've behaved problematically in the past. And, like, that professor immediately, like, shut it down and was like, I'm a woman of color, you're a white person, like, I have a hard time finding jobs, and also it's academia.
Also, just, like, who gives a shit?
Exactly.
Like, why does it matter? Why does every little thing matter so much?
Exactly, like...
Like, big picture, come on, we have to, like, save our emotional energy for, like, the greater issues at hand, not, like... cherry-picking something someone said 5 years ago, or, like, deciding who holds and doesn't hold the correct views on, like, what being trans actually means in a historical context, or, like, arguing over whether or not you're allowed to, like, criticize Beyonce.
Yeah. I got in that argument, like, yesterday with one of my friends.
It's a common, like, dispute that happens.
Yeah. I am critical of Beyonce. If you want to come after me, please do. I welcome it.
I feel like you should be allowed to be critical of anyone.
You should be critical of any public figure.
As long as you're coming from the right direction.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, a healthy society can't function.
Exactly. You can't... That's the thing. You can't make gods out of your idols. Like, you really cannot do that. Like, don't idols, you know. If you idealize someone, like, they're going to fail.
Also,
at
like,
what you want from... Like,
using intersectionality for emotional leverage is not what it's supposed to be used for.
Yeah.
That's just such a bastardization of the entire concept.
Yeah.
And, oh god, that makes me so mad.
Like, if someone steals ideas from other people of color and then doesn't credit them,
that's a problem.
They should be held accountable for that.
Yeah.
Like, that's something they should be held accountable for.
Also, fucking sweatshops.
We're gonna get canceled for criticizing Beyonce.
I don't fucking care. I'm not gonna censor myself.
No, it's fair.
I'm done censoring myself.
Criticism is valid, and you should criticize people, and you should apply critical thinking to everything you do and everything you read, because everyone has an intent when they're doing something.
Also, just, like, say what you think about something.
Yeah.
Don't hold yourself back. And then if someone disagrees with you and is coming from, like, a genuine place, you can have a discussion about it.
Exactly, and, like,
as
be
long as there's, like,
enough to, like, change your opinion.
As long as there's, like, no deep-seated hate or bigotry involved, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
God. Sorry, I got mad.
No, it's okay. I understand. It's very frustrating. Like, and then you have, like, Barack Obama talking about how cancel culture is bad.
God, he's such a fucking idiot.
Like, he's not. He's a very smart man. But at the same
time, I think
time,
he's a dumbass.
Yeah, I mean...
He read Foucault to get laid.
Yeah, or pretended to.
Either way, that's, like, a dumbass thing to do.
And then you write about it in a book, like,
right.
Okay, I don't know, whatever. Like, okay, humanize yourself, because you know the left is like, you're a terrorist. But at the same time, like, come on, man.
I'm still stuck on Erica listening to, like, 18 hours of his audiobook while working in a government office.
God, that sounds so soul-sucking.
Military-industrial complex whom.
Oh my god. Did he narrate it?
I think so. Which is why it was so jarring to hear him say fuck, I think.
Oh yeah. I don't know. That doesn't align with my, like, view of Obama.
Yeah, I will... If you're an ex-president or a current president and you say the fuck word, the Secret Service should be able to take you out.
Oh my god. If I was Joe Biden right now, all I would be doing is just, like, screaming fuck in, like, an empty room.
I don't think Joe Biden's capable of saying fuck.
I don't think so either. Earlier I saw a tweet that was like, I wonder how Corn Pop's doing, and my immediate thought was like, that motherfucker's dead. Like, the Corn Pop is dead.
The Corn Pop video is just the sort of thing where, like, I watched it several times to, like, understand what he was saying, and I just couldn't.
He hadn't taken his Adderall
Corn Pop was a real bad dude. So how do you feel about the inauguration, Lydia?
Oh, about the inauguration?
Yeah.
I was sitting there watching and expecting him to get assassinated. I'm not joking. I was just sitting there and I was like, fuck.
Do you know if any protests were happening?
I assume so. I know that they're, like, happening... Like, there's, like, people gathered in different, like, state capitals and stuff. I don't know about in D.C. because they literally had 25,000 National Guard people there.
Well, like, you remember when Trump got elected?
Yeah, there were widespread protests everywhere.
Like, everything exploded.
Like, were you here? You were here when he got elected, right? Or were you?
Oh my god, so he got... I'm just divulging my whole mental health history. He got elected when I was a junior in college.
Yeah.
And then that December, I completely crashed and burned mentally.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm imagining the election contributed to that.
Yeah.
And right after that, I started talking to my ex again, which wasn't a good idea.
No.
Like, I even told one of my roommates that, and she was just like, what the hell is wrong with you? But, like, we texted about that a bit, which is why I remember the protests that were happening then so vividly.
Yeah.
Because I think that was also when Richard Spencer got punched in the face.
Oh, yeah. It was around the same time.
And
A memory
as he was explaining his Pepe the Frog pin...
Fuck you, Richard Spencer.
Where's Spency? Where's Spency been this whole time?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't heard anything about Spency.
True. Yo, Steve Bannon got fucking pardoned.
I know. I have, like...
Trump didn't pardon himself. I was sitting there, I was hoping.
Is he allowed to?
No, but I thought he would try. Everyone was saying he's gonna try.
Well, the NPR headline that was just like, Trump pardons Bannon and Lil Wayne. Like, I was just, like, cracking up at work.
Yep.
Like, why... I mean, like, I'm glad Lil Wayne was pardoned, but, like, why Lil Wayne? Do you know?
Yeah, it was because he was one of, like, the big proponents, of Trump's, like, Diamond Plan, or whatever it was called. It was, like, either the Diamond Plan or the Platinum Plan, which was, an economic plan that Trump proposed right before the election.
Okay.
And a lot of rappers were on board with it and, like, giving speeches and shit at his rallies, because
so
they're all millionaires.
I knew nothing about
this. And it was, like,
this.
a shit ton of tax cuts for millionaires. And so because of that, and because
Lil
of, like,
Wayne
their
got
financial
pardoned
prospects,
for his weapons charges.
Yeah, they were in 2020, right? His
I think so.
charges?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had, like, a big boy gun.
Didn't he try to, like... No, I'm thinking of something else. There was some rapper who tried to bring weapons across the border from Canada, and they're like, no, you can't do that. And then he got arrested. It might have been Kodak Black, but I'm not sure.
That sounds like a very Kodak Black thing to do.
Yeah.
What is like cis men's fascination with big boy guns again?
I don't know. I guess someone told them their dick was not big enough once.
Yeah, like, I have a lot of, like, internet friends, and I say internet friends, but they're friends from my old college who are, like, real big into, like, socialist rifle associations.
Yeah.
And I'm just, like, on one hand, like, yeah, sure, protect yourself, but on the other hand, like, why?
I don't know.
Like, I have such mixed feelings about weapons in general, just because of, like, my personal experiences with guns.
Yeah.
But, like, I'll try and bring up a valid point about, like, hey, like, I dated someone who was abusive, who owned a pile of guns and was a leftist.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't this part of the conversation? And everyone just, like, shoots me down and mansplains feminism to me.
God, that was such, like, I remember that conversation on Facebook that you had, that you were just like, because people don't want to think about that. I mean, it's just like with any domestic violence, people don't want to factor that in and how it's, like, an underlying thing in our society.
Someone literally said,
like, if socialism happens, it'll go away.
That was part of it. The other part was, like, guns don't really play any significant role in domestic violence and who becomes an abuser. And I'm just like, are you a fucking moron?
Yeah.
Like, do you know how these are used as, like, psychological terror against vulnerable people in, like, horrible situations?
Yeah.
Like, even for me, I was, like, scared shitless all the time because they were in the room.
Yeah, so it's a present threat.
Yeah.
And
also, it's a lot. Getting shot kills you more often than getting punched does.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
You have to do, like, a lot more damage to someone to kill them with, like...
just battery.
Exactly.
Just like, God, communist men are so fucking stupid. We're gonna get canceled.
I don't care. If the tankies try to cancel me, I welcome it.
I just remember anytime my ex got called a tanky, they would like throw a tantrum.
Tanky behavior.
I'm just gonna start using that. Like, I classify this as tanky behavior. I say as someone who is like deep into like Marxist theoretical analysis.
It's okay. We were all tankies once.
Yeah, my tanky phase was just literally because I was trying to make friends and I was lonely.
That's fair. I guess my tanky phase was because I was just trying to lash out at my father while in high school.
When I was lashing out in high school, I just was like an edgy kid.
My dad said there will be no communists under this roof. And then I was like, well, why'd you make me read the Butter Battle book so many times? Then I don't understand.
Nah, I had a really bad edgy phase. Jasper, what are you doing? I had an ironic NRA hat because Carl was in the NRA for like a year before.
Didn't
like,
they declare bankruptcy?
I know. He was just like, we need to exercise our Second Amendment rights, and then a bunch of shootings happened, and he was just like, I am no longer in the NRA.
I am no longer in the NRA. Oh my god.
The Russick family saga.
Yeah. Did you watch Joe Biden's acceptance speech? His inaugural speech.
No, I was at work.
Part of it was like, we need to make schools safe again. And I was like, Joe, how are you gonna do that if you're not pro gun buyback?
Yeah.
Or gun control.
I just remember the police officer. We had like one cop at my school in high school, Officer Matthias, who was like this butch woman with like long blonde hair.
Yeah.
Which is like terrifying.
Yeah.
She never did anything except for like one time she tasered a kid that I knew and went to elementary school with because he had shrooms.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, we don't need more of that.
No, we don't need more of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I had like 6 or 7 cops in my school.
Well, your school was like, my school was a lot more rural than yours.
Yeah. Mine was like minority white.
Yeah.
Majoritively like kids who fell under like the free or reduced lunch like economical line. But yeah, we had a lot of cops in our school. They were always around like at lunch and stuff. And it was normal. Like, some of them were nice, other ones just had no personality. I never saw anyone get tasered. I saw them like break up fights and shit, but like other than that, it wasn't.
Yeah, we only had a few fights at my school.
Yeah, we had a lot.
Yeah.
It got better as time went on. Definitely like fights my freshman year compared to like my senior year were like significantly different. But
yeah. Like every once in a while we'd have one and people would just be like, bro, what?
Yeah.
Like, why are you acting out?
Literally. Why are you acting out?
Why are you acting out?
Why are you attention seeking?
Yeah. I would threaten to beat up people a lot, but I never actually did. And it was mostly as a joke. It was mostly just like masculine posturing because I was like insecure about the fact I was like a tiny little woman.
Yeah. Senior year, when I was in like a very bad place and taking like a lot of hard classes, I was extremely stressed, and this kid on the bus touched me, and he like touched, you know, like how kids like touch each other. And so he touched me, and I turned around and I said, "Go fuck yourself or I will kill you." And my brother was like, "Lydia, like, we need, like, you're really stressed. Like, we need to do something about this." He was like,
Thanks,
"Did you
Aiden.
just say that to someone?" And I was like, "I suppose I did." But that was probably the only time ever in school that I like was aggressive towards someone else.
Me and Colin.
Yeah.
I like karate chopped him on the head once and hurt my hand.
Oh no.
He wasn't hurt, obviously. Yeah. I just hurt my hand real bad.
I would bitch people out if they were like bullying people in the like hallway and shit, but other than that.
Yeah, I did bitch people out if they were mean to me. I like didn't take shit.
Yeah.
I did one time. I told Colin I was gonna staple his ear to the side of his skull as a joke, and some girl heard me and reported me, and they pulled all the security tapes on the bus.
Damn.
Yeah, I was real scared.
Yeah. Wow. They took that shit seriously.
They took it real serious. I thought I was gonna get expelled because I made a joke.
Did I ever tell you about how my sister bit that kid in middle school and made him bleed?
I mean, Emma, I'll censor her name, but my sister broke someone's foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is like middle school ADHD kid.
Literally.
Shit.
Yep. There it is. But
it is what it is.
good times. All right. Do you have any wrapping up thoughts on Chris Chan and Sonichu?
Not real. I say I'm always doing that in job interviews. Do you have any questions? I don't think so. We covered everything. Yeah, honestly, I just wrote here, it's got to be noted that he's not a good person.
Yeah.
Which is like another thing to keep in mind. Like, Chris Chan is not a great person.
Yeah. But I think you can
a sympathetic character.
Yeah.
But they have done a lot of like actively bad things even if you take into account the fact that they're not very well socialized and don't really understand boundaries. Yeah,
like they've done like toxic and threatening things to people, especially like people in their lives.
Yeah.
Women especially in their lives. In their life. I don't know, I made that plural.
The lives of Chris Chan and Sonichu, the same entity.
The same entity. Yeah, so I think like just taking into consideration that someone can in fact be a bad person, but also does not deserve to be like mocked mercilessly.
The world is nuanced.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Multiple things can be true at once.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the world. All right. So in that case, do you have any idea what you're gonna subject me to?
I know we talked about over text about Onision, I want to say.
We can talk about Onision.
If you don't want to, we don't have to, because it's like heavy in sexual assault. And I know both of us aren't particularly fond of that topic.
I mean, I have so many thoughts about Onision because I grew, like, my sister introduced me to his videos, I think, when I was in, like, the middle of high school. And then I watched him for a few years, and then by the time I was 17, I was just like, I'm getting a really weird vibe from this dude, and I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, like, even as a teen, I was just like, something is not right here.
Yeah.
And it's making me feel weird, especially, like, all the shit with Shiloh.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I know almost nothing about Onision.
There's a documentary now.
I know, that's why, I remember us talking about that, and so I, like, looked up the documentary earlier, and was like, I can watch this 3-parter. I just like, devoured the fucking Richard Ramirez doc that Netflix put out, like, a week ago, so...
Yeah, Chris Hansen's voice sounds a lot like Ben Shapiro's, and I don't like realizing that.
I kept watching clips of Chris Hansen talking last night, trying to hear it, and I was just like, I can see where you're coming from, but also, like, maybe.
He sounds...
Ben Shapiro just, like, he talks straight out of his nose, and as a person who also talks straight out of their nose, like... I feel it.
I don't. I talk like
from
my press.
You talk how you're supposed to.
No, that's not necessarily true. I've noticed that a lot of women on the spectrum and a lot of people assigned female at birth on the spectrum tend to talk more heavily with like a chest voice.
Yeah.
I think because the like socialization that you're supposed to like do higher pitched doesn't like sink in quite as far.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, that was just, like, a thought that I've had for a while.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that before. It does make sense. Also, like, women are socialized to, like, speak in, like, not, like, a higher, but, you know, like, speech patterns and things like that.
Yeah, I only notice that when I'm doing, like, customer service or when I'm, like, uncomfortable around someone.
Do your customer service voice.
I can't do that on command. I can't be pleasant on command. No.
Mildly pleasant.
Hi, how can I help you?
There we go.
Do you need a straw?
Would you like a straw?
What kind of bagel would you like?
Oh my god. What kind of bagel would you like?
Rye,
That sounds good.
pumpernickel.
Rye always tastes like mint to me, so I can't eat it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I also like get the soapy cilantro taste too, so I don't know.
When I was living with my ex, their dad would get like rye and pumpernickel bread, and like the house rule was that you could like eat whatever, but like if you ate the rye or pumpernickel bread, the dad would get like real mad at you.
Oh my god.
I got like cussed out in the kitchen a few times.
Was it like special bread?
No, the dad was just autistic.
Yeah. No rye or pumpernickel for you. It's too rich for you.
Yeah, I also got yelled at for like doing the dishes by hand instead of putting them in the dishwasher.
See, I don't get that because when I put dishes in the dishwasher, I just wash them like anyways. I just put them clean in the dishwasher.
Well, the part of the thing was like I was never sure whether the dishes in it were like dirty or clean.
Yeah.
I didn't know the cycle, so it was just like easier for me to do it by hand.
And also just saves time.
Also, I was unemployed living in a basement. I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah,
Give me
you
something
have to do something. You have to clean or do something.
Yeah.
So.
Well, on that note.
All right, do your dishes by hand.
Do your dishes.
Dishwashers don't actually waste water, but I'm gonna keep believing they do because that's how my worldview is, and that's what I'm comfortable believing.
Just like Chris believing Sonichu is real.
That's a pretty strong comparison, but I accept it. That's
okay,
fine.
cool.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.